Hollywoodland released in 2006 and ran 2 hours 6 minutes. Beginning at George Reeves' end and the cops constantly talking about him being depressed is frustrating, almost like they are saying, "Nothing to see here. We have no work to do. The case is closed." It's also interesting to me that I can very distinctly remember picking up this movie when it released when I lived in Hawaii, because it's just a very prominent time in my life. New location. Chester Sinclair is paying Louis Simo to find out who his wife is sleeping with. Sinclair is not all there, and Simo works out of a sleazy location. After getting paid, Louis goes to see his son Evan, who is upset with the death of Superman. Simo, the private eye, gave his son an Etch-a-Sketch, but the gift doesn't help get out of the funk that he's in. The pain of Superman being gone is just too much. After dropping off Evan at school, Louis meets with his former partner. This explains why Simo thinks so highly of himself. He used to be a cop. The former partner tells Louis the mother of Reeves doesn't believe that he shot himself. Helen asks Simo if he is with the agency, only for him to say he branched out. How creative of him to make his private detective business seem like it's an extension of being a cop. Adrian Brody is so confident early in the film, especially when it comes to him doing cop things, even though he no longer is a police officer. Simo paying his way in to see George Reeves' body. I love the question Louis asked, did he beat himself up before he shot himself? We then flash back. George is attempting to get noticed, basically throwing his body into pictures with more famous actors. Ben Affleck is so very smooth as George Reeves. He kisses Toni Mannix, who says, "I'm much too old for you." She should have said, "I'm much too married," instead, in my opinion. But Toni doesn't really seem to be much concerned with her marriage. Back to the now in the movie, not the movie's past, and Simo finds out Mrs. Mannix bought Mr. Reeves a lot of things from a sweet old lady. Tony's husband, Eddie Mannix, is played by Bob Hoskins, and that man always brings out the best in everything. When George found out that Edgar is the general manager of MGM, he worries that he may ruin his career. Toni will not let that happen, or so she says. She even tells Reeves about Mr. Mannix's girlfriend to ease his mind about her having him on the side. Simo listening in on the reading of Reeves' will, very sneaky. Outside the will reading, and Louis confronts Leonora Lemon. I find it very amusing that the actor who played Clark Kent, the character in the black and white era TV show, George Reeves, was dating a woman with an LL name, since Clark Kent, the character, was also into/dating Lois Lane and Lana Lang at different points. Reeves left everything to Mrs. Mannix, which seems weird since she needs for nothing and actually provided him with a lot. But then again, she did provide him, so maybe it's just like almost a quid pro quo. Another flashback, and Eddie is super powerful. But Toni is so disrespectful towards her husband, reaching for Reeves' crotch while they're all out to dinner. My, how the times have changed. Basically, everyone is smoking, waiting to audition for the role of Superman. George is so down about the idea that he got the gig, he doesn't want to be Clark Kent. He wants to be Clark Gable. I think that is such a bummer because Reeves thinks he looks like a fool in the grayscale Superman suit. Back to Simo, and he is so stern with his son for burning his Superman costume in the house. I guess Evan doesn't know about Lewis's looking into the death of George Reeves. Good thing the house didn't burn down, that's for sure. Back with Tony and George, and she is very territorial for a woman who is married to an entirely different man. She is trying to keep Reeves away from his co-star by telling him that the woman playing Lois Lane is also into women. And when George inquires about it, she basically says that he should think that every woman is into women and that she's the only one for him, which again just feels so very off to me. Because how can you both simultaneously say that he can't look at other women slash he's off the market when you should be off the market, but you put yourself out there for him to be with him instead of your own husband? One clear thing about the time jumping is if Ben Affleck is acting, we know it is in the past, so that's something to help clarify the back and forth nature of the way this film was put together. George Reeves' mother telling the press her son wasn't lost, he was taken, is a strong line. Lewis having photographs taken of him consoling Superman's mom feels cheap, but also like the old age version of posting you helping the homeless on social media. Anytime I begin to question Simo as being less than the top noble guy, he then hits the cops with a great line like, did the guy miss twice and then put the rug down before getting the fatal shot in? Lewis confronting Eddie Mannix was both great and showed his power. Edgar's right-hand man is very not happy with Simo, but he isn't alone. The PI has also made an enemy out of Miss Lemon, who he refers to as a longshoreman on a bender after she is very upset with Lewis for basically accusing her of being a suspect. Thank you for being here at Mr. Super Oz. This video is going out, and this channel only exists because I, Oz, founded Gamble Comics, which first release was Everlasting Survivors, a 68-page graphic novel called All Day Long, available now. Follow the link in the description that will take you to gamblecomics.com. While there you can get hats, shirts, posters, much, much more, but most importantly, the story itself. Simo's wit is so crisp. So the current list of suspects slash enemies goes as follows: the ex-fiance, the husband of the sugar mama, probably the sugar mama herself, George Reeves himself. Oh, also the right-hand man of Eddie, for sure. Louis Simo's ability to envision the different scenarios of how the death may have occurred could be my favorite part of the movie. All the people feel real because no one is perfect. I felt dirty when the private investigator pushed the mother of the dead guy for cash. Then she calls Leonora a greedy slut, and I instantly feel like, maybe it wasn't so bad for him to try and get the money up front. Back in time in Kellogg's is how Superman got out of the grayscale suit. Reeves is not happy to be in the red and blue tights, but every kid loves the show. 90% positive ratings. George Reeves not being prepared for fame, so he is smoking in public with his manager and his mistress. Art, his manager, recommends he stop smoking since Superman doesn't smoke. Oh no, a ridiculous kid brought a gun to a publicity event which Reeves is drunk at. Thankfully, Superman can talk the kid out of pulling the trigger by convincing him that he'd be okay, but the bullet will bounce off of him and it could hurt someone else due to the ricochet. Very smart, George. Very smart. It's also very scary, but good job convincing the kid not to pull that trigger. It's very unbreakable. Lewis trying to go speak with Tony, but she doesn't see him. Edgar's fixer tells Simo, truth doesn't matter. If anything prevents one person from buying one ticket, it's got to be fixed. This line makes me think that he is less likely to have killed George, as the bad headlines could prevent the sale of one ticket. George being unable to act in anything without people seeing Superman is really sad for him, as he loved to say he was in Gone with the Wind before he was Superman. And so he thought that George Reeves, could have been more. Back with Lewis, and he got hit in the head with a chain. This could be the end of Simo. After the terrible assault from the shady Hollywood folks, Lewis gets a call about his other case, the man who paid him to find out who his wife was sleeping with. Well, since Simo didn't find out, the husband found out his own answers, and the wife ended up getting shot so many times. It was just nuts. Back in the past, and Art goes to see George after Superman was canceled, and Reeves might be the happiest I've ever seen him while setting the super suit on fire. The cops constantly saying, depressed in the beginning, stood out because George Reeves never seemed down to me. As a matter of fact, Lewis has felt more down than George the whole movie. And when Miss Lemon tells Simo that it was his mother and not her that screwed George's head up, or screwed George's head on wrong, I'm beginning to wonder if Lewis will be okay, especially when he confronts Reeves' mom, who turns out to be a real piece of work, wanting money and fame, not answers or closure. Not a fan of Simo drinking and driving. On top of that, going to get Evan while drunk, not a great plan. Just glad Evan doesn't get in the car with his drunk father. Another flashback, this time Tony yells at George, and he stands up for himself. She says that Superman was all he could be. 10-year-olds are the only ones who think that he has talent. Ouch. Lewis having a guilty conscience about the client who killed his wife makes him more focused than ever. Simo then finds out that George had no brakes a couple of weeks before his death, and that Mannix, his fixer, has used that style to clean up before. Seeing Edgar upset because of how hurt Tony is very heartbreaking. I feel like Eddie would rather Tony be happy than George be dead. Maybe both Mannixes would be okay with Reeves' career being killed, but I don't think that either of them wanted him dead. Leonora Lemon upset with Art, while George is calm, once again, making me question if he is depressed. Reeves is in talks to get into professional wrestling. When Lewis finally was able to talk with Tony, she is super incoherent, saying George was shot, but not clear if she knows any more about it. Lewis talking with Art, and for the first time, and I think Simo also, think perhaps it was or could have been Reeves himself, because Art gave Lewis the wrestling tryout tape and George was not in the right shape for it. The tape gave me the feeling that George Reeves may have given up, like he looked defeated. Lewis imagines the death again, only this time the way that the cops from the start thought it played out. Sad, Simo remembers helping Evan play as if he could fly when he and his ex had still been together. Simo putting his priorities in the right place, ending the movie with Evan, and while I do think that the film is a bit long, the struggle for me is to think of a thing I would want to be left out. And so with that in mind, I give Hollywoodland a good 4 out of 5 stars. It is a heavy story with very down moments, but it was so well executed. And just not being able to clearly come up with things that felt unnecessary to me means a lot. Each moment felt as if it was needed to put the whole puzzle together in Simo's mind, which is what he excelled at, was putting the puzzle pieces together to figure out how everything played out. And with that, yeah, it's totally worth watching even almost 20 years later. So, thanks for tuning in. Later.